Burmese pythons have transformed the entire ecosystem of South Florida. After arriving here as seemingly innocent pets, these snakes have overrun their new environment in just a few decades.
Florida's wild heart has always beaten in tangled swamps and sunlit forests where predators and prey danced a delicate ballet for centuries. But when a silent invasion began in the shadows, the entire landscape shifted. But one invasive predator changed everything. The Burmese python. Since the 1980s, this uninvited predator has run rampant through this brutal stretch of swamps, sawgrass, and mangroves. Native creatures vanished. Panic spread, and the natural order seemed to collapse. As experts scrambled for answers, Florida's next move left the world in disbelief. Many species of reptile have been introduced to Florida before, but none have taken over quite like the Burmese python has. Was the government really trying to solve this issue by releasing hundreds of rare snake killers in its ecosystem? And yet, a decision mocked by millions became the state's last hope. This is the story of an audacious experiment that changed the very meaning of survival. The snake invasion nobody saw coming. Florida in the early 20th century was a place of wild abundance. Tangled mangrove coastlines, endless sawgrass prairies, cypress swamps humming with insects and alive with the flicker of animal life. Into this ancient landscape came an uninvited guest, carried across oceans not as a harbinger of ruin, but as a novelty. In the 1930s, Burmese pythons, monsters of the jungle, were imported from the forests of Southeast Asia, destined for the glass tanks and living rooms of exotic animal enthusiasts. People marveled at their shifting patterns and enormous strength, rarely questioning the wisdom of taming the wild. For a time, they were little more than curiosities, photographed and paraded at carnivals or traded between collectors. But some soon realized the reality of owning a creature that could grow to 20 feet and squeeze the life from a goat. Some owners, unable or unwilling to care for these titans, simply released them. Hurricanes, accidents, and neglect set others loose. The Everglades, with its warm winters, flooded sloughs, and endless supply of prey, offered sanctuary beyond anything the snakes could have known in their native home. Unseen and unopposed, the pythons multiplied. Their eggs, laid deep in the marsh, or beneath rotting logs, hatched in secret. Hatchlings grew quickly, feeding on everything from lizards to baby rabbits. As the years slipped by, their numbers swelled. By the turn of the new millennium, the Everglades and the tangled wilds around it were no longer just the domain of alligators and herald. The python had arrived, and it brought with it an insatiable hunger. It did not take long for the signs to become unmistakable. Marsh rabbits vanished, their tracks erased from the muddy banks. Raccoons and opossums, once so abundant they bordered on pests, seemed to disappear into thin air. The silent glide of a python through shallow water became a death sentence for anything too slow to escape its embrace. The swamps of Florida were transformed. Where once there was a riot of bird song and mammalian chatter, there was now a hollow quiet. The ghosts of missing animals haunting the reed choke channels. The invasion was invisible at first, but soon the damage was everywhere. Hunters, biologists, and locals reported finding fewer and fewer animals. The pythons, apex predators without rival or limitation, coiled themselves around the heart of the ecosystem and squeezed. With every vanished species, Florida lost a piece of its soul. The invasion had begun, and the outcome was already tipping. Florida was losing. Vanishing wildlife. The numbers that emerged in the early 21st century were not merely alarming. They were apocalyptic. From 2003 to 2011, a series of landmark studies sent shock waves through the conservation world. In vast swaths of southern Florida, the raccoon, a creature known for its cunning and adaptability, had been reduced by more than 99% wherever pythons had taken hold. Opossums, famed for their resilience and resourcefulness, were almost entirely erased, their decline measured at 98.9%. Bobcats, silent hunters of the underbrush, had declined by nearly 90%. Marsh rabbits, foxes, even deer calves all gone. Their fates entwined with the relentless rise of the python. This was not a slow fade into obscurity. It was the abrupt collapse of an entire food web. Each missing mammal created new gaps. Ripple effects that shattered balances developed over millennia. With fewer prey animals, hawks and owls struggled. The seeds these mammals once spread lay dormant, changing the very shape of the landscape. Predators that once controlled disease-carrying rodents vanished, leaving humans exposed to new threats. But the nightmare did not end with the python. Florida's native venomous snakes, pit vipers, and coral snakes found themselves unchecked, thriving in an ecosystem thrown out of rhythm. They moved into territories abandoned by vanished mammals. With their populations unregulated, encounters with people, pets, and livestock became frequent and dangerous. Emergency rooms across the state filled with victims suffering the agony of venom. Each bite a reminder of a natural order gone awry. To scientists, the message was clear. The system was collapsing under the weight of its missing parts. The Everglades, once described as one of the most intricate and biologically rich environments on Earth, now teetered on the brink. In newsrooms and living rooms among rangers, farmers, and city dwellers, the phrase began to circulate like a grim prophecy. It's over. The balance was gone. And with it, perhaps any hope of turning the tide. The mockery begins. Against this backdrop of catastrophe, a new announcement crackled through headlines and television broadcasts, igniting equal measures of hope and ridicule. In a move that bordered on the surreal, Florida's wildlife authorities unveiled a plan as daring as it was unexpected. The answer to the python crisis and the unchecked surge of venomous native snakes would be more snakes. But not just any snakes. The state would release hundreds of eastern indigo snakes, a species long vanished from much of its range and officially declared endangered decades before. The proposal landed like a thunderclap. Journalists and talk show hosts seized on the absurdity. Florida to fight snakes with snakes blared one headline. Editorials lampooned the idea as a sign of bureaucratic madness or a last flailing gasp of failed conservation. On social media, the story mutated into a viral spectacle. Users created memes poking fun at a state seemingly obsessed with snakes, as if the government planned to solve every problem by doubling down on chaos. Only Florida, the world seemed to agree, would try to dig itself out of a snake pit by throwing in more snakes. The public laughed, shrugged, and dismissed the plan as an act of desperation dressed in scientific jargon. It was easier to mock than to understand. But beneath the layers of scorn and disbelief, something real was taking shape. The plan was not born out of panic, but out of a deep understanding of what had been lost and what could still be restored. The eastern indigo snake was not just another reptile. It was a missing keystone, a natural predator of venomous snakes. A gentle giant whose presence once kept ecosystems in check. While the world jeered, a handful of biologists, conservationists, and visionaries began quietly working to bring back a balance that had once defined.